In this discussion, I want to speak of inflation. Inflation is a kind of a unique animal. You understand inflation is the increase in the amount of money or fiat currency. In this case, all countries have fiat currency, fake money. The amount of fiat currency increases faster than the amount of goods and services available. As a result, each dollar or yen or whatever it might be becomes less and less valuable. You have to spend more of them to buy a given thing or service. Inflation has an aspect that's different than deflation or depression or virtually anything else I can think of. It's an emotional aspect. At some point, if people begin to believe that the value of their money is dropping so quickly, it's no longer worth its value for trade or to save for the future. They begin buying things, whether they need things or not, with the idea that they can exchange that phony money dropping in value for something that retains value. When that happens, then people are willing to spend more and more and more for things, and the value of the money collapses. I have two bills that I paid about $8 for from Zimbabwe about 5 years ago during the Zimbabwe runaway inflation. The bills were worth about $1.50 simply because the person who bought them needed to make a profit selling them. The rest was mailing and other expenses. One bill is $100 trillion, the other is $50 trillion. When the $100 trillion bill was printed, you could buy 2 eggs at the grocery store, and probably only that day. People had lost confidence in the money. The Zimbabweans survived because they switched to American dollars and South American rands and different things like that to do their trade. And some people had silver coins that had been previously used in the country. So they were able to survive. And it's an agricultural country. People didn't have much in the way of loans, and they produced their own food to a large extent. So they were able to survive. But in a country like ours, the destruction of the money would be the destruction in the futures and the fortunes of many people. The Federal Reserve starts the inflationary process by producing literally trillions of dollars on a computer keyboard. Around 2008, 2009, the banking crisis that was covered over but has not ended even now. In secret, the Federal Reserve created $17 trillion on a computer keyboard and divided it up among the 12 member banks that own the Federal Reserve to preserve them because they had bet the money and lost it. It was done in secret. This wasn't uncovered till about 2012 when a partial audit of the Federal Reserve discovered they created a $17 trillion. That was created at the time the national debt was $9 trillion. It shows you the criminality of the Federal Reserve and the federal government, which creates them and protects them against their punishment for their criminality. But they create all that backlog of money. Right now, there is no inflation. There's a depression. The economy is collapsing, so prices are dropping. Prices of foreign currencies are dropping. Prices of oil are presently dropping. Prices of commodities are dropping. That's because people are poor and they're losing their jobs and there's not as much money to buy things. The real inflation comes in the phase where the banks, which are now holding their money at the Federal Reserve. Now, the Federal Reserve is giving them about 1/4 of 1% interest every year on the money they bank with the Federal Reserve. It was just created out of air on a computer keyboard. The reason is not because they're trying to reward the banks risk-free for putting their money there. The federal government has required the banks to put a certain amount of money every year aside as insurance in case they fail. And the Federal Reserve is simply giving them enough money to cover the cost of the insurance. But at some point, if demand for money becomes increasingly into existence and the banks are willing to lend the money, whenever the bank has $1, they lend out at least 10. That's inflationary because even if the $1 they were given as a deposit is lent out, excuse me, if $1 is given to them for deposit, they lend out 10. 9 of them don't even exist. That's when the inflation starts. And there's a component of people's understanding, people's faith or lack of faith in the money. When that faith is broken, people lose faith in the currency and it begins to devalue quickly. Demands right now are low. Very few people want to make a loan, and the people who want to make a loan aren't generally qualified. So for right now, we are in a depression when inflation is not a likelihood. But we're on the knife edge, because if the Federal Reserve and the American government do the wrong things, again, lose confidence of the American public, an inflationary period could start rapidly. It's so important to be able to have plenty of money on hand to be able to protect ourselves when we see that next phase coming. I'll try to do the best I can to help you understand that when it comes. Inflation is caused by governments. Real money, gold and silver, that was developed by people, individuals, trading with one another as a way to do so efficiently. Governments didn't create money. They just attempt to control it as a method of controlling the population and increasing power. It interested me of a great man, John Locke, years and years ago, made a statement that I thought was appropriate. The statement was, when governments act, quotes, the statement was, quotes, when governments act contrary to the end for which they were constituted, they are at a state of war with the citizens, and resistance is lawful. What he was trying to say is, citizens should not stand by and let the government destroy their money or take away their God-given constitutionally protected rights. I know that sounds hard, and you may wonder, what can I do? But I think it's important for us to do everything we can to limit or eliminate our dependence upon the government to take care of ourselves and our families and our friends and the people we care about, and to resist willingly going along with the government when it produces laws, taxes, regulations, which are purely contrary to the whole purpose of government.